Welcome back to The Explainer. I am so thrilled you're joining us for session 12 today because, wow, we are tackling a seriously fascinating puzzle. Our goal right now is to explore the completely inseparable link between the language we speak and the culture we actually live in. We're going to decode the American cultural mosaic, literally piece by piece, to figure out how it shapes the way people actually communicate out in the real world. So why do we learn grammar but still completely fail to communicate? I mean, it's incredibly frustrating, isn't it? You can memorize thousands of vocabulary words. You can master literally every complex grammar rule in the textbook. And yet, when you step into a real conversation with a native English speaker, you might still struggle to really connect. The words are right, but the meaning, it just kind of gets lost in translation. To understand why this happens, consider this story about a Californian barber. He spent years interacting with a hugely diverse group of immigrant clients, and he once noted something profound. He said, "Good English, but no communication." He observed that foreign speakers often know all the right words, but the missing ingredient, the thing that actually makes a conversation click, is cultural understanding. Without the culture, the words are, well, just an empty shell. Okay, let's dive right into this. To solve this communication puzzle today, we're looking at 5 specific pieces of the American mosaic. We'll start with 2 sides of a coin, explore the American melting pot, jump into pastimes, sounds, and swings, taste our way through a diverse culinary landscape, and finally, look at Hollywood's cultural export. All right, section 1, 2 sides of a coin, language and culture. Listen, you simply cannot separate the English language from American culture. They are permanently bonded together, influencing and shaping one another every single day. But how do we even define this massive concept? Well, culture is a complex system of shared norms, traditions, values, and institutions that define a society. Think of culture as the hidden rulebook for daily behavior. It dictates everything from what we wear to how we introduce ourselves to what we consider polite or, completely impolite. If language is the car you drive, culture is the rules of the road. You absolutely need both to get to your destination safely. Moving on to section 2, the American melting pot, exploring core values. So America's identity is fundamentally built on immigration from incredibly diverse ethnic, racial, and religious backgrounds. In fact, the U.S. Census Bureau estimates that there are over 300 different languages spoken across the United States today. 300. This brilliantly illustrates the sheer vastness of the cultural mosaic. It's a society where hundreds of subcultures are constantly interacting with an overarching national culture. And out of that massive melting pot emerge some very distinct core American values. We see a strong sense of patriotism and pride in national symbols like the flag. There's a fierce protection of basic freedoms, speech, religion, the press. But look really closely at individualism and punctuality. The belief in self-reliance in the American dream directly shapes how Americans speak and act. And the concept that time is money, well, that creates a strict cultural requirement for punctuality. If you're late to an American business meeting, you aren't just breaking a schedule. You are violating a core cultural norm. Now, what's really interesting here is how those values bleed directly into everyday etiquette. Formal communication involves using titles like Mr., Miss, Sir, or Ma'am, which is absolutely crucial when you're meeting strangers. However, because of that fast-paced, individualistic culture we just talked about, Americans often move very quickly to informal communication. We're talking a quick handshake, direct eye contact, a smile, and then boom, immediately jumping to first names. Knowing exactly when to maintain that polite distance and when to drop the formalities, that's what separates a textbook English speaker from a confident, natural communicator. All right, section 3, pastimes, sounds and swings, music and sports. Let's see how these American values actually play out in everyday pastimes. Consider 2 profoundly American creations, jazz and baseball. Jazz, which was born in the African-American communities of New Orleans, relies entirely on improvisation and distinct solo performances. Every single musician has a unique style. Baseball, on the other hand, America's oldest professional sport, relies heavily on individual talent when a batter is up at the plate. But the true brilliance of both is that individual talent only succeeds within the framework of a team. I mean, a jazz soloist needs the band's rhythm, right? And a batter needs the outfielders to actually win the game. It's this perfect cultural balance of shining as an individual while cooperating as a collective. Looking a bit closer at baseball's timeline, we can see exactly how it unified the country. The first recorded game under modernish rules was back in 1846 between the New York Knickerbockers and the New York Nine. But what's super fascinating is the 1860s. During the absolute turmoil of the American Civil War, the game expanded nationally as soldiers from completely different regions played it together in camps. By 1903, it had grown so massive that the first World Series was established. It literally went from a localized New York hobby to the entire nation's unified game of choice.
Next up, Section 4, a diverse culinary landscape, regional flavors.
You know, the American dinner table is driven entirely by the country's vast geography and its rich immigrant history. Up in New England, the freezing Atlantic Ocean gives us a very seafood-heavy diet. Think thick, warm clam chowder and striped bass. Head down to the south, and the culture shifts completely to soul food, fried chicken, catfish, and hush puppies. Move over to the southwest, and the proximity to Mexico creates this beautiful Tex-Mex fusion featuring tacos and chili con carne. You simply cannot understand American English vocabulary around food without understanding the diverse regional environments that created these very menus.
And how Americans eat is honestly just as diverse as what they eat. On one hand, you have fine dining, which is highly formal, requires dressing up in suits or dresses, and really demands polite etiquette. Contrast that with the classic American diner. Fast, super casual, and often open 24/7. But here's the thing. Regardless of whether you're in a fancy 5-star restaurant in New York or a little roadside diner in Texas, there's one universal cultural constant: the famously massive American food portion.
Which actually brings us to a crucial piece of culture vocabulary: leftovers. Because the portions are just so large, it is completely normal, expected, and totally culturally acceptable for American diners to ask to take their uneaten food home. You don't need to feel shy about asking for a doggy bag at all. It's a perfect example of seamlessly connecting an English vocabulary word directly with an everyday cultural habit.
Finally, Section 5, Hollywood's cultural export, the global influence.
So this is how America takes all of these cultural elements we've been discussing and projects them out into the world. For over 100 years, Hollywood has been the global epicenter of entertainment. It is America's overarching cultural export, and it shapes not just what the world watches, but the very slang, fashion, and values that people across the globe adopt every single day.
But how did it actually start? Well, Hollywood was incorporated as a municipality in Los Angeles way back in 1903. By 1915, it was the official center of the film industry. But why California? Filmmakers originally fled there from the East Coast to find great sunny weather for year-round shooting and, get this, interestingly enough, to escape the strict patent laws enforced by Thomas Edison's company over in New Jersey. By the 1960s, Hollywood experienced a massive golden age, expanding into sitcoms and television networks, and ultimately solidifying a massive global media empire.
So the absolutely crucial point here is this: engaging with this industry is one of the best ways to learn English. Mastering essential vocabulary like script, soundtrack, director, producer, cast, and extras, it unlocks a massive portion of conversational English. Why? Because these exact words are used constantly in everyday American metaphors. Seriously, watching classic films from the 1930s or 50s alongside modern blockbusters is an incredibly powerful learning tool. It allows you to literally watch the culture evolve right in front of you. You can track how the values, the fashion, and most importantly, the vocabulary of American culture have shifted across the decades. Movies are essentially your bridge between the rigid grammar of a textbook and the vibrant real-life context of actual human communication. So now that you've seen the hidden rulebook, and now that you know the culture behind the words, how will it change the way you speak? Are you ready to stop just reciting grammar rules and start truly communicating? Think about how you can apply these cultural insights in your very next English conversation. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep decoding the world around you.